Rachel Reeves is under fire once again. The Chancellor stood up today in what has been dubbed a dull speech. She bragged of her economic prowess and her strategy for growth, even as the economic indicators turn red. And the opposition have already been calling for her to resign.
Before we came into office, the Prime Minister and I have said loud and clear, economic growth is the #1 mission of this government. Without growth, we cannot cut hospital waiting lists or put more police on the streets. Without growth, we cannot meet our climate goals or give the next generation the opportunities that they need to thrive. But most of all, without economic growth, we cannot improve the living standards of ordinary working people. Because growth isn't simply about lines on a graph. It's about the pounds in people's pockets.
Mr. Speaker, this whole sorry tale is nothing short of a Shakespearean tragedy, playing out before our eyes. This is the Hamlet of our time. They promised the electorate much while pouring the poison into their ear. At the end, you can feel the end. The Chancellor flailing, estranged it seems from those closest to her, those about her falling, the drums beating ever closer. To go or not to go, that is now a question. The Prime Minister will be damned if he does, but he will surely be damned if he does not.
But Reeves vowed she would fight to bring growth to the UK.
Low growth is not our destiny. But growth will not come without a fight. Without a government willing to take the right decisions now to change our country's future for the better. That's what our plan for change is all about. That is what drives me.
Reeves praised small business, yet has been widely condemned with hammering entrepreneurs since taking power.
We as a country have huge potential. A country of strong communities, with small and local businesses at their heart. First and foremost, it is businesses, investors and entrepreneurs who drive economic growth. A government that systematically removes barriers that they face, one by one, and has their back is the solution to our challenges.
Things have gotten so bad the UK is hemorrhaging millionaires.
We're now about 10,000 millionaires that have left since lockdown. UBS predict it's going to be 500,000, which is 1/6 of all millionaires in the UK. And the budget really hurt entrepreneurs and business owners. She's never run a business, and the economy is a business. Seems very out of touch with what it takes to grow an economy. And the budget was just a penalty for enterprise and growth. So I cannot see any signs that anything is going to get any better. I mean, I was just in Dubai, Patrick, and there's virtually no VAT, there's virtually no corporation tax, there's no income tax. They're very inviting to entrepreneurship, and it feels a very different place.
Yeah, I mean, look, I saw that you tweeted something, or X'd something, whatever we're supposed to call it these days, earlier on, which I thought was a really good point, which is that now, so you said, look, you put this, your grandfather could earn a good, honest living on a modest wage, own a home, buy a car, keep his wife and home and raise some kids, etc., have holidays, retire with plenty of life left. Now, you need 2 household incomes, both parents to work, you can't afford a home, a car and holidays on credit cards. It's a life of debt and death by taxes. The system is broken. I mean, how do we fix that? What do we have to do about that?
Well, first thing is we need to start reducing some of these taxes.
Reeves vowed never again to rattle the markets.
Economic stability is the precondition for economic growth. That's why the first piece of legislation that we passed as a government was the Budget Responsibility Act. So that never again can we see our independent forecasters sidelined. And never again will we see a repeat of the Liz Truss mini-budget, which sent borrowing costs and mortgage rates spiralling for families.
Yet the Chancellor did just that with her budget, as borrowing costs soared.
Mr. Speaker, I know that the Chancellor has been away, so let me update her on the mess that she left behind. The pound has hit a 14-month low. Government borrowing costs are at a 27-year high. Growth has been killed stone dead. Inflation is rising, impacting millions. Interest rates are staying higher for longer, and business confidence has fallen through the floor. The party opposite talked down the economy. They crippled businesses with colossal taxes, breaking all their promises. This is a crisis made in Downing Street. And Mr. Speaker, it should hardly surprise the Chancellor that international markets are uneasy. The UK's long-term borrowing costs have risen to their highest in almost 30 years. But while the government was losing control of the economy, Mr. Speaker, where was the Chancellor? Her trip to China had not even begun when my urgent question was taken in the House last week. She was still in the country, but she sent the Chief Secretary rather than face up to her own failures. So can I ask the Right Honourable Lady why she chose not to respond herself? Mr. Speaker, the Chancellor, of course, ducked the difficult questions by jetting off to Beijing. I believe that in Labour circles they are calling it the Peking duck, Mr. Speaker. Well, whatever was on the menu in China, was it really worth the unedifying sight of an increasingly desperate politician scampering halfway around the world with a begging bowl?
To add to what some might view as delusion, Reeves highlighted encouraging signs in the economy.
And we are seeing some encouraging signs in the British economy. The IMF have upgraded our growth prospects for 2025, the only G7 country outside the US to see this happen. This gives us the fastest growth of any major European economy this year. And a global survey of CEOs by PwC has shown that Britain is now the second most attractive country in the world for businesses looking to invest. The first time that the UK has been in that position for 28 years. This is all welcome news.
Yet Britain's economy is flatlining.
If we look at some of the latest economic data, it doesn't make for great reading for the Treasury or indeed the government. Lower manufacturing production, got new work falling at the fastest pace since October 2023. Prices have increased at the fastest level for 18 months in January. Employment has fallen for 4 months. This is all since the budget, so it can't really be blamed on 14 years of Tory rule. It's not a great indictment, is it, of the way that Labour is running the economy?
Well, what the headlines like that underscore for me is how important it is that we go further and faster to boost economic growth. And that is why we are relentless about this. And we will be doing everything we possibly can to get growth to increase.
Growth isn't increasing, that's the problem.
Well, if you look at what the IMF and the OECD have said recently, they've set out that we will be growing at a fast rate over the coming years. And if you look at what PwC said, for instance, we're the second best investment location in the world, only after the US. So there is cause for optimism. But
I know, but the actual figures aren't looking particularly positive. In fact, some economics experts think that we might actually go into recession. So if we go into recession, what does that say about Rachel Reeves's growth pledge?
Well, all of the headlines say to me, we need to go further and faster to boost growth. And that's why what the Chancellor is setting out today
about... What will happen if we go into recession, James Murray?
Well, we don't want that to happen. We want economic growth to be boosted. And
Could it happen, though?
What we want to do as a government is make sure economic growth is as strong as possible. And that's why we're doing all these changes.
Could you actually go into recession? You've promised all of this growth. The figures look dire. What happens if we go into recession? Would Rachel Reeves then have to consider her position?
Well, look, the Chancellor has a plan to get the economy growing. Part of our plan for change is about boosting economic growth, and that's why we are so determined to focus on the changes we need to make.
I know you're determined, but let me put it this way. Are you ruling out a recession, or do you think we could go into recession over the course of the next 12 months?
Well, no, we want the economy to grow fast. Well, I'm not...
I want you to answer my question. Are you ruling out a recession here on the show?
Well, I can't predict everything that's going to happen over the next 5 years. What I can say is what we will do as a government.
I'm just saying in the next 6 months. By the end of the year, will we definitely grow or could we go into recession? Are you able to rule a recession out?
Well, I can't predict the future, but what I can do...
You can't rule out a recession, even though you're putting all of your economic hopes on growth. And the Chancellor Rachel Reeves is promising growth at every different turn.
But
if you don't achieve it, it will be a failure.
Well, what we know is that there are economic headwinds affecting the UK. But that, for me, underscores the importance of us going further and faster.
But these economic headwinds are all since January. They're all since the budget.
And despite all the pressure on business and the wider economy, Labour are still committed to net zero.
There is no trade-off between economic growth and net zero. Quite the opposite. Net zero is the industrial opportunity of the 21st century, and Britain must lead the way. That is why we will publish a refreshed carbon budget delivery plan later this year, which alongside the spending review will set out our plans to deliver Carbon Budget 6.
Reform UK's Richard Tice laid into Reeves.
It was just unbelievable. So dull.
And it was so heavily trailed, so I really thought there's got to be some dynamic revelation in there.
Well, the revelation was that they've got a big plan to create short-term growth by investing in a long-term runway that we know will never be built in about 20 to 30 years' time.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing's ludicrous. And I think your listeners and viewers realise that. The crisis is now. Literally as we speak, thousands and thousands of people are losing their jobs every single week. And this lot are completely out of touch. They've realised there's a growth problem, and you can say that again because we're in recession per person. And the only thing that they should do, which they won't do, is accept that their budget is the greatest blunder budget that any of us can ever recall. And they've got to reverse course. And you can't keep increasing taxes on business, small businesses, where there was no reference in this speech. You can't keep increasing regulations on employment laws and more besides. And you can't have more net zero under the auspices of Mad Miliband and expect the economy to grow. It's impossible. It will not happen. And we will continue to get poorer.
And Kemi Badenoch rinsed the Prime Minister as arrogant while torching their employment reforms.
Mr. Speaker, the arrogance of the Prime Minister is that he thinks that it's his government that creates growth. He's wrong. It is business that creates growth. Our economy is built by entrepreneurs, risk takers, and the hard graft of working people. They know that you can't tax your way to growth. You can't borrow your way to growth. You can't legislate your way to growth. Other countries are serious about freeing business from red tape. President Trump is doing it in America. Argentina is taking a chainsaw to regulations. Even the EU is not going as far as this left-wing government. This bill will put us at the bottom of the pack. Add it to the jobs tax, the family business tax. It's no wonder wealth creators are fleeing Britain in droves. The Chancellor is desperately trying to save her reputation. She knows Labour have damaged growth. This bill manifestly fails the Prime Minister's own growth test. If he won't drop the unemployment bill, what is the point of his growth test?
And despite soaring immigration, which the ONS projects will add nearly 5 million people to Britain in the next few years, the Chancellor says she wants to increase the number of some types of visas.
I set out plans for attracting global talent to Britain. We will look at the visa routes for very highly skilled people, so the best people in the world choose the UK to live, work and create wealth, bringing jobs and investment to Britain.
Nicholas Dunning, GB News.